All praises to the Most High Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Raha Quadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring in his truth in all sincerity. Revelation chapter 12, verses 9 through 12, and I'll read this in the NLT. This great dragon, the ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, was thrown down to the earth with all his angels. Then I heard a loud voice shouting across the heavens, "It has come at last, salvation and power, and the kingdom of our power, and the authority of his anointed one. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down to earth, the one accusing them before our power day and night. And they have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony. And they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who live in the heavens rejoice. But terror will come on the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great anger, knowing that he has little time." So that was a video off of X.com, formerly known as Twitter. And this is off an individual's page named Collin Rugg. That's at COLLINRUGG at Collin Rugg. And he types new Cole Allen, that is the alleged potential shooter there, spewed anti-Christian and anti-Trump rhetoric on his social media accounts. Said he wanted to target the Trump administration in his manifesto, according to CBS News. According to Allen's sister, he sent the manifesto to his family before the incident. Allen had also attended a No Kings rally in California and was a part of the group named the Wide Awakes, per Fox News. Allen fired a total of 5 to 8 shots during the incident. He was not struck. He traveled by train from Los Angeles to Chicago, then from Chicago to Washington, D.C. According to a senior U.S. official, one of his family members notified police about his manifesto. Allen did not mention the White House Correspondents' Dinner in the manifesto. The writings were reportedly written on paper and found in his hotel room. And once again, that is a picture there on the left-hand side of your screen of the alleged would-be assassin. It's kind of hard to believe that a would-be assassin can get off 5 to 8 shots with both the president and the vice president within striking distance, and there was no secret service agent, I should say, who was able to drop him. That's a lot of shots to get off, and none of the president's Secret Service agents were able to actually drop this potential shooter here, or this potential assassin. So I'm just pointing out an observation. And another observation, if we go back and look at this, that I noticed as well. I'm going to play this one more time, but I'm going to stop at about 5 to 8 seconds in. Right there. As a matter of fact, 2 seconds in. If you notice, Secret Service actually got J.D. Vance out of there before they got Trump out of there. Trump is, at this point right here where you see them rushing J.D. Vance off the screen, Trump is still sitting down at the table. Let's look at that again. That's them just now getting Trump out 11 seconds later. So here you have the Secret Service are supposed to be protecting the president first and foremost, but 2 seconds into the video, they rushed J.D. Vance out of there. A full 11 seconds later is when you just now starting to see them rush Trump out of there. So that's just another observation that I made there. So this whole thing looks staged, and the alleged would-be assassin kind of looks like a low-budget Steph Curry, if I could say that. But I really couldn't find a whole lot of info on this guy. Once again, his name is Cole Allen. You know, outside of the fact that he's a teacher and he's biracial, I'm not 100% certain as to which, what his background is. I should say, his mother and his father, not sure which one is so-called black and white. Like I said, the only thing I was able to find on him really was the fact that he was a teacher, biracial, nothing real major, So I'm not very sure if he's of the tribes, probably Judah, if he was, but, this looks like it's shaping up to be something to keep an eye on. And the reason why I say that is because, there's been a few presidents that I can think of right off the top of my head, Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, Reagan, James Garfield, William McKinley, and I can't recall any one of these particular assassinations or assassination attempts where the would-be assassin was potentially a Jake. So this is why I'm saying this is something to keep an eye on, because the great accusation, which I opened up with in Revelation chapter 12, this is what it looks like it's shaping up to be here. Here you have a Jake who was a teacher who's now potentially a would-be assassin against a sitting president. So I want to go into Jeremiah 30:7 real fast. And I'll read this as well in the NLT. In all history, there has never been such a time of terror. It will be a time of trouble for my people, Israel. Yet in the end, they will be saved. So once again, just thinking of some presidents off the top of my head, Lincoln, Reagan, Kennedy, McKinley, Trump, as a matter of fact, I don't ever recall a time when a president was actually targeted by someone of the tribes, actually. So this is looking like, we're right here at the beginning stages. The Northern Kingdom has already been dealing with Jacob's trouble. But if they're able to somehow pin a presidential assassination attempt on the Southern Kingdom, primarily Judah, we may really be right here at the beginning stages of Jacob's trouble. And not that it was, nothing wasn't happening before that wasn't troubling, but what I mean is they may really be about to turn this up a notch here, and that's the thing about it, is I really wasn't going to do a video just yet on this particular topic. I kind of wanted to wait a day or two to see, what other information came out. But I ended up coming across an Alex Jones. So I'm going to play this Alex Jones video right here. First, I'm going to read what he says. I do not think the shooting last night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was staged. I want to play this video real fast.
Everybody's asking me whether or not I think the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner last night in D.C. was staged, and the long and short of it is no. You had too many of the D.C. police, Secret Service, all of them involved. The very small percentage of those guys are corrupt. Something like that will right out in the open. A registered Democrat, Trump derangement syndrome, 30-year-old teacher, Everybody keeps saying that, how do you get through security? He didn't. He waited till the event was going. Then he charged the metal detectors, barely got through it, and they shot him twice. He had a shotgun. He shot one of the Secret Service, but the body armor stopped the buckshot. That's just the facts. That doesn't mean we don't have cover-ups of Epstein and cover-ups of a second shooter in Butler, Pennsylvania. Doesn't mean I just believe what Kash Patel and them say. But, there's footage of Kash Patel out in the dark. Cell phones are so good, though, you can hit, up the light, you can see him. He's all on his phone, not knowing what's going on, because they ushered them all out. But the guy did not get into the main ballroom. Trump's been told that that's not a safe facility. That's why he's never been there as president. But over the objections to secret...
I'm going to stop it right there. The main point was already made. Basically, Alex Jones stating that he does not think that the shooting last night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was staged. And, when it comes to this guy right here, Alex Jones, for as long as I've heard this guy speaking, probably now close to about 18 or 19 years on YouTube, and I will come across his videos or even come across his actual, program that he does. Everything with this guy it's always a false flag. It's always a psyop. There's always some level of government or media deception involved, to trick the masses or the sheeple. That's his word, the sheeple. But here we are now with a potential Jake involved in this. And all of a sudden, he doesn't think the shooting was staged. There's no talk of false flag or psyop here all of a sudden. There's no talk of government media deception involved or any of this right here. Basically right now he's flat out saying it hasn't even been a full damn 24 hours before he said this. Normally he would do a program. I got all the information right here, folks. And he'll slam down a pile of papers, on his desk in front of him. He didn't have no papers. He didn't wait to do any research. He didn't wait for any of his people to get back to him with any information. He immediately gets in front of the camera less than 24 hours later and says, I don't think last night's shooting was staged. So that just goes to show you where this guy is. And this isn't the first time I've seen him do something like this. I remember some years back, and there was a situation where a Jake had killed a cop. And I want to say this was the incident that happened in Dallas. And I really wish I would have thought about this prior to me uploading this video, because I would have had that ready. But there was an information, and I could have this mixed up, where it probably was a cop who shot an unarmed black person. But whatever the situation was, Alex Jones immediately got in front of the camera and stated, I'm not saying anybody should do anything to the cops. I'm not saying anything like that. Any other time it's, we got to rebel against the forces. We got to, we got to stand up to tyranny. Any other time it's that. But in this particular case here, which I remember a few years back, there was a Jake who had an incident with a cop, and the Jake, now that I think about it, was shot. And Alex Jones immediately, he put aside all of that stand up to tyranny talk all of a sudden. Now here we go again. You have a situation where there's a would-be assassin now against a sitting president. And the first thing Alex Jones does is come out and say, I don't think it was staged. When any other time, it would be a false flag or a psyop or something to that level of, Alex Jones getting in front of the camera to try to explain away what just happened. But, right now we're seeing Nero's approval rating is really low right now. He's not really popular because of what's going on with this Iran situation. So what's the quickest way to regalvanize his MAGA base, to reunite them? Another attempt on his life, so, and this time though is possibly by a Jake, and this is right after, he starts making these type of posts, these type of comments about another Jake here, Candace Owens. So you see it there. Donald J. Trump, Truth Social post at 5:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 4/26. This was just a couple of days ago. Candace Owens' stock, which was never very high, has fallen a long way. Her attack on the First Lady of France is despicable. I believe in this case, without verification, she is extremely low. She is an extremely low IQ individual. And that is a real picture of Candace Owens. It's been doctored a little, but that is an actual picture of her. They've darkened it a little bit. They've kind of altered it a little bit to make her look, kind of like a damn hood rat chick wearing this damn scarf on her head or whatever. But that is an actual picture of her, the actual Vile Person of the Year time. Now that part is, generated, online generated or something, but they used a real picture of her that's just been altered a little bit. So once again, Trump basically says Candace Owens' stock, which was never very high, has fallen a long way. Her attack on the First Lady of France is despicable. I believe in this case, without verification, she is an extremely low IQ individual. So that was 2 days ago. So now Trump is going after Candace Owens. Just a few years ago, he was praising her. They've had some type of falling out where now she believes that he is, basically taking too many orders from these small hats. So she's had a lot to say about that recently, as did Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson. They've all had a lot to say about that. But now you're seeing Alex Jones is kind of backing off of it because now is the opportune time to, hey, we can reorganize. This is a chance to reorganize, regalvanize the base before the midterms. Here we have a potential black or so-called black assassin, or at the very least, a biracial assassin, one of his parents potentially black. Now is the time to reunify our white base. Candace Owens, she's kind of the odd person out here. The reason why I say that is because so-called whites in this country are only going to sit back for so long. And I'm talking about those on the right, the so-called conservatives. They're only going to sit back for so long and watch you or listen to you continually go after a white person. Candace Owens for the longest has been throwing shots at white people. Now you have Charlie Kirk's wife, his widow. They've kind of been going at it. And a lot of whites are not really taking too kindly to that. They're not really appreciating the fact that Candace Owens, this uppity black chick that they've given a platform to and supported over the years, has now stopped talking about black Americans. And she now has kind of redirected her focus not only on Trump, but also onto Charlie Kirk's widow. So they've kind of been attacking her lately. And Trump is basically right now, one thing about Trump is, I'm not so certain he's the person that's discalculating. So I do believe, like I said in a video, maybe 3 or 4 videos again, I do believe this is someone, he has an advisor very close to him telling him, go after this person, go after that person, don't say this, don't say that, or try to stay away from this, but really address this. And what he does is come right after her. The only black person in that crew that's against him, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, they kind of have the complexion for protection, so to speak. Candace Owens has to realize here that she is the odd person out. And, it's one thing if Megyn Kelly is criticizing Charlie Kirk's widow. It's another thing if Candace Owens is doing it. And she's sitting there really convincing herself or believing that white people are going to sit there for so long and keep allowing her to do that. So we're seeing now some of the backlash turning on her. So we'll see where she comes out of this, But right now, like I said, you can see this thing taking form now. For the most part, the Southern Kingdom has remained quiet since Nero has been in office. You don't see any marching or protesting or rallies or anything to that effect. And that's really a Judite tactic. And I would also add a little bit of Reuben in there as well. A little small percentage of Gad. And even though that's both the southern and the northern kingdoms, when it comes to Judah, Reuben, and Gad, all being here together for pretty much at least the past 400 to 500 years, they've all been put into the one big nigga category, so, and they're under that classification, I should say, of so-called black or black American, so, but when it comes to, the southern kingdom right now, and you see Nero clearly putting up a racist post and an altered picture, once you start seeing, these crackers start talking about she's an extremely low IQ individual, this is what they say, this is what they talk, this is how they talk, They have high IQs. Everyone else besides Asians have very low IQs. But when it comes to black Americans and, Hamites, we like the lowest IQ across the board when it comes to let them tell a story. And this is exactly what they're doing to her right now. I believe in this case, without verification, she is an extremely low IQ individual. He's dog whistling to his base. He's letting his base know, hey, I got out of line a little bit with this whole situation in Iran. But the one thing that can get us back together is I start going after this chick right here, Candace Owens, and then there's a fucking would-be assassination attempt on my life. And guess what? The would-be assassin is a Jake, or potentially a Jake, possibly a Jake, which is why I went into Jeremiah chapter 30 and 7. We may be at the beginning stages. This is how these guys, you can see this thing starting to take shape here. You can see it starting to take form here, so this is where this great accusation is going to start coming from, Here we have, is he a lone wolf? Did he act alone, this so-called would-be assassin? Or you already see that they already had the some group that he was a part of. Let me go back and look at that. I'm just going to go back to that initial tweet that I read right here. Right there. Allen had also attended a No Kings rally in California and was a part of the group named the Wide Awakes. Now, I've never heard of any group called the Wide Awakes, but I do know one thing. Whenever there's a mass school shooting or any type of mass shooting and there's a white suspect, the very first thing the media does is they come out and say, that was a lone wolf. He acted alone. The damn shooting was just 20 fucking minutes ago, but already they're saying he was a lone wolf, he acted alone. I mean, not even a whole damn 24-hour passes here, and they're already saying this nigga was not a lone wolf. He was part of a group called the Wide Awakes. So it'll be interesting to see, who some of these people are in this particular group, this so-called group that they're saying he was a part of. Was this a group of Jakes? Was this a group of Hispanics? This is what it says. He traveled by train from Los Angeles to Chicago, then from Chicago to Washington, D.C. So if he was living in L.A., L.A. has a fairly high demographic when it comes to the tribes there. So it's going to be real interesting to see who these Wide Awakes are if they start putting faces and names all on television. But what else I wanted to get into? So let's see. But like I was stating, when it comes to this particular would-be assassin, by putting up a potential black American as a failed assassination attempt against a sitting president, this may be something, because we haven't seen this before, and this is what I was stating earlier. Out of all the presidents that there have been assassination attempts or actual assassinations, if I'm correct, this may be the very first one that is possibly a Jake here. So this may be a little bit different here. Not so much as far as it's concerning Black Americans ourselves, but I'm talking more so amongst so-called white conservative, amongst that particular population. Just like the previous so-called assassination attempts against his life, where he started, I'm talking about Nero here, Trump. The previous assassination attempt, and if you recall, we all saw that shit on television. Somebody starts shooting at him. He gets hit with some damn shrapnel in the air. His air is bleeding, and he starts pumping his fist, saying, "Fight, fight, fight." I'm pretty sure everyone remembers that, but that was then, and if you remember that, that's what really galvanized his base. They was like really motivated. They was making all types of damn memes and shit. I remember I came across a meme on X, and they had Trump walking out after that shit, and they was playing fucking Many Men, 50 Cent in the background. Like, that was the background music to it. So they got Trump walking in slow motion, and all you hear is many men, many, 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 many men wish death on. And it's like, yo, look at this. So they really ran with that. So what they're going to do with this one right here, where now you have a potential Jake in the mix of this, so this is why, I'm saying, and not to mention, this is right before the midterms, so the timing on this is everything. You got to look at the timing on this shit. This is right before, maybe 4, 5, 6 months before the midterms in November. So you start looking at the timing of this, and the very first two people to get thrown under the bus is Candace Owens, and now you have a damn Jake, potential presidential assassin. And and like I mentioned earlier, Alex Jones, he's already taken a side here. And I also mentioned, there's Megyn Kelly, possibly Nick Fuentes, so we may actually see the reunification of these particular individuals here, as well as Tucker Carlson, all of these people that have been at odds with Trump because of what's going on in Iran. But let there be a damn potential presidential assassin, and that may just be what the doctor ordered as far as, getting these people reunified right before the midterms. And basically that's their way of letting them know that, hey, Candace Owens, we don't need your ass anymore. You've served your purpose, but really you're like the odd person out here. And you're really not bringing anything. You were unable to solidify the black vote. No one else, you've pretty much, they don't really need you for the Catholic vote. So she's the odd person out here. This is why you don't see any of them defending Candace Owens after Trump just really went in on her like that. So, and they were all like they were all in lockstep with each other, Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones. Yeah, they may have had their disagreements amongst each other, but when it came to that Iran war, they were all basically feeding off of each other. But when Trump now goes after Candace Owens, it's crickets over there. So this is going to be real interesting. They're basically letting her know that, we don't need you anymore. So we'll see over the next few days and weeks if those people I just mentioned start having a change of heart about Trump the way Alex Jones did. Like I said, Alex Jones has picked his side already. He's already flat out come out and said, I don't think that event was staged. That shit was real. The guy who has made a career off of talking about false flags and, psyops and all kind of shit. But when it comes to having a damn potential Jake assassin, then all of a sudden he flat out comes out and says, that was real. There's nothing fake about that shit. Let's go into Ecclesiasticus chapter 12. Verse 10, never trust thine enemy, for like as Salakia, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. I'm going to scroll down to the very last verse here. He will shake his head and clap his hands and whisper much and change his countenance and his appearance. And that's exactly the advice that, Candace Owens needs, or people like her. If you're one of these people that was out here rooting for Trump and you fell in love with Trump, or you was laughing because you thought he was a shit talker, but now you see what this thing is shaping up to be here. As soon as his approval rating gets really, really, really low, the so-called blacks who supported him, such as Candace Owens, they're going to get thrown under the bus. They're going to be really scapegoated. And then you're going to also start seeing would-be black assassins or would-be so-called black assassins and shit start popping up out of nowhere. And all of a sudden they're part of a damn group called whatever that group was I mentioned earlier. So what was that group? The Wide Awakes. So let's go into a CNN article that I came across. This article came out on April 23rd, 2026. This was before the assassination attempt, or the latest assassination attempt. This was approximately 3 days ago. How would an assassination attempt be staged? I'm not going to read the whole thing. As you can see right there, this is an 8-minute article. It would take roughly 8 minutes to read this. So the image was instantly iconic. Donald Trump, moments after an attempt on his life, is surrounded by Secret Service agents attempting to rush him to a car. Face bloodied, he takes a defiant turn toward his supporters and pumps a fist into the air. An American flag waves in the background. And this is the event I was talking about a few minutes ago. He gets hit because he was not actually shot. That was not an actual bullet that went through his ear. If that was the case with that type of weapon, with that type of ammunition, his entire damn ear would have been blown off. That was a piece of shrapnel that he got hit with, and it bloodied his ear a little bit. But, in this particular case here, they're basically asking the question, how would an assassination attempt be staged? And they have staged in quotations. So this particular article here goes into it, and this is off of CNN.com. Like I said, this was published April 23rd of this year here. Was it too iconic? In the hours after a man tried to assassinate Trump at a 2024 campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, baseless conspiracy theories about the shooting and the photo in particular flooded the internet. Some anti-Trumpers declared it's too good to be true, arguing that the incident must have been staged to boost his campaign. More than a year into Trump's second term, the claim was acquired new life. The claim has acquired new life. Now among prominent people in the MAGAverse, disillusioned with the man they once supported. So we all know that Trump used to be an actor. He had a reality television show called The Apprentice. We may have seen him in brief appearances like in Home Alone, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, basically playing himself. You may have also seen him on WWE wrestling. So there is a bit of an acting background there. Just something to keep in mind. But I'm not going to read this entire article. Just wanted to show you that this was something that just came out 3 days ago. How would an assassination attempt be staged? So this comes out 3 days ago, and then just last night, there's another attempt on his life. We see in the video that I played earlier, the Secret Service is rushing J.D. Vance out first. Then they rush Trump out 11 seconds later, But I'll get right back into that, in a second here. But basically, this whole thing, man, is political theater. It's all scripted. You come out with this article, CNN puts out an article, how would an assassination attempt be staged? You read the fucking article, they talk about the last time this shit happened, and then it happens again, And so you clearly seeing, man, that this is all political theater. It's all scripted, All of this is to keep you focused on what they put in front of you and to give you the illusion that you have a voice or any kind of say-so in these particular types of matters, such as like voting and shit. But, those particular plans, their plans are already being brought to fruition, on matters that no one votes for. So like I said, they give you that illusion that your vote matters, But the things that they're actually pushing and that are coming to fruition, nobody ever votes for that type of stuff. You know, no one voted for digital ID or the RFID microchip, which is the MOTB, the mark of the beast. Nobody voted for that shit. You know, nobody voted for 15-minute cities. You know, nobody voted for AI to start taking their jobs. You know, no one voted for inflation, you know, rising gas prices, food, rent, shit like that. You know, nobody votes for that type of stuff, you know. So this whole election cycle, you know, the whole election day, that whole process, it gives you the illusion that you have a say in this shit when you really don't. You know, like I said, man, no one voted for rising gas prices. No politician gets up there and says, next time you go to the damn pump, you'll be paying like $4.50 a gallon. And then people flock out there and vote for him. It doesn't work that way. So like I said, it's all an illusion. It's the illusion that you have, you know, any type of say-so in this thing when you don't. So once again, how would an assassination attempt be staged? Staged in parentheses. 2 days later, there's an assassination attempt. Not an actual assassination, an assassination attempt, just like it's worded here in the title. How would an assassination attempt be staged? That's not coincidence. That is not worded incorrectly. They put this level of deceit right in your face. You know, they put it in all of our faces. And the average reader would look at this and would read this whole article, this whole 8-minute long article, and some people would see it. Some people can see that this is political theater. Some people will read this and say, oh, it's all conspiracy. Why would they put this shit right in front of you like this and then turn around right and do it? That, you know, that's their entire, you know, that's their motive for doing it. You know, that's their alibi right there. Why would we put it in front of you and then actually fucking be stupid enough to do it? Who would believe that shit? You know, so if you repeat it, you sound like a conspiracy theorist. But like I said, they put this deceit right in front of you. You know, so I'm gonna go to a video real fast. Let's get into this Trump video. This is directly after the shooting here, after the attempted shooting.
Ever seen before. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, you know, it's not a particularly secure building, and I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before.
So this ballroom that Trump is pushing for, and he's been pushing for this for some months now, stating that the White House needs an official ballroom so that they don't have to hold these events in unsecure locations. And that's basically what he's advocating for right there. And another reason why it's so obvious to see that this entire shooting was staged, because Trump is actually pushing for something here. Even if he has to create, even if the people around him that surrounds him, if they have to create an actual crisis like that, or a potential emergency event like that, they'll do whatever they have to do to get this ballroom created, you know. Go to one more thing here, and then I'm going to go into a scripture. So this is a list of people here pushing for this same ballroom. I'm not going to read each person's name. I'm just going to read what they typed. This is why President Trump needs to build the White House ballroom. This is why we need Trump's ballroom. Thank God President Trump is building a ballroom at the White House. Now you know why the left is suing to block Trump's privately funded White House ballroom. We need the White House ballroom. I don't want to hear one more fucking criticism of Trump's new ballroom at the White House. That was from Meghan McCain. That is the daughter of former presidential candidate John McCain. Once again, she says, I don't want to hear one fucking criticism of Trump's new ballroom at the White House. Now you know why they don't want Trump to build a ballroom in the White House. I don't want to hear another word from Democrats about the White House ballroom or Department of Homeland Security funding now. The Democrat judges who stopped the construction of a White House ballroom did so to enable an assassination of Trump, which almost happened tonight. John Roberts needs to get these thugs into order. Everyone sees what they are trying to do. Tonight is one more reason for the new White House Trump ballroom. If only there was a ballroom at the White House where they could host secure events. That White House ballroom is looking better and better. Would be real nice if the White House had its own ballroom, huh? Build the White House ballroom. Now, we'd better never again hear a peep from anyone complaining about a White House ballroom. When Democrats don't get their way, they get dangerous. Build the White House ballroom ASAP. Let's go into Psalms chapter 2. I'm only going to read verses 1 through 4. Why are the nations so angry? Why do they waste their time with futile plans? The kings of the earth prepare for battle. The rulers plot together against Yahweh Bashem Yahushai and against his anointed one. Let us break their chains, they cry, and free ourselves from slavery to Yahweh. But the one who rules in heaven laughs. Yahweh Bashem Yahushai scoffs at them. So the reason why I wanted to go into this particular scripture here and coincide it with, and actually make the correlation, I should say, with the actual, with Trump up there lobbying for this particular ballroom and those series of tweets that I just read off, including a former president's daughter in total agreement about this ballroom, is because this particular ballroom is not just what that is. This is not just the actual room where they host events, you know. Let's go into this real fast. Did Nero construct a Baal temple? Yes, Emperor Nero is credited with contributing to the construction of the temple of Jupiter, also associated with Baal, at Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon, specifically in the mid-1st century AD. Construction phase. While the massive temple complex was built over several centuries by multiple Roman emperors, starting with Julius Caesar and Augustus, the main construction of the shrine itself was completed around 60 AD during Nero's reign. The tower altar. Historical accounts indicate that in the mid-1st century, Nero specifically built the tower altar opposite the main temple of Jupiter. I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to read the entire thing. Well, I'll read the context. The Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek, ancient Heliopolis, was a Roman attempt to blend traditional Roman power with local Semitic religious practices, specifically the worship of Baal, often identified as Jupiter Heliopolitanus. Colossal scale. The structure is famous for its colossal scale, including the 3 stones in its foundation, which are among the heaviest blocks ever used in construction. This particular White House ballroom, this is Nero continuing where he left off. This is not just a ballroom, this is the Baal room that Trump is trying to, why he's been talking about this now since he's gotten back into office, wanting to complete this construction. This is Nero back, basically trying to pick up where he left off.
the Baal room, not the ballroom, the Baal room. So as you all know, in ancient tradition, Baal was a god of power and fertility and control. Baal promised protection and order and abundance, but only if people surrendered to him. Not love, but submit. And that's exactly what happens in this ballroom. Jack enters the ballroom broke and insignificant. And the room answers him by making him feel important, by making him feel chosen and seen. And it lures him in by saying, you've always been the caretaker. That's not flattery for Jack, that's his initiation into the Baal room. Jack is being told in this scene he doesn't have to change anything. He just has to maintain what was, what already exists. And that's how this elite worship structure works. You don't question anything. You just become a part of it. Baal doesn't demand belief. The ancient god demands you continue the process. Jack wants to feel important, and the Overlook is offering him something way more ancient. Something bigger and larger and definitely unchallenged. But
I'm going to stop that right there. That's basically what I was just stating. This guy here is going into a breakdown of the ending scene or the flashbacks that Jack Torrance in the movie The Shining, played by Jack Nicholson. Jack Torrance in the Overlook Hotel, and you see it at the end of the movie where, if I'm correct, the year of the photograph at the very end of the movie, I haven't seen it in some years. I believe it was 1917 or 1927. But the events that took place were actually like real modern events. It's just that he was there in the past and he's back again, and he ended up trying to kill his family like he did in the past. It's the same exact thing. This Baal room that they're saying is a ballroom that Trump wants, that Trump has been lobbying for. And I just read how Nero built a temple to Baal. This is Trump once again. This is reincarnation. The movie The Shining went into reincarnation. You know, they've put these type of movies in front of us for a very long time. You know, and when you can see these things playing out, you know, this is, you know, all praises to the Most High, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, because, you know, you can see these things playing out. Sometimes they'll put it in front of you in movie form. Sometimes they'll put it in front of you with pictures. Like there's a viral post that's floating around on Twitter. You know, you see like these pictures of like modern pictures of Nicki Minaj, Eddie Murphy, like several, you know, Nicolas Cage. There's several stars, or I should say at least modern Hollywood personalities or people that you're familiar with. And then there was somebody that looks exactly like them. There was actual pictures of them. I may even do a video on that, showing, you know, that this, you know, this reincarnation thing, it's serious. The elites understand reincarnation. Trump, who is Nero back in the flesh today, he may not actually understand it. I don't know if he does or not, but he's definitely trying to pick up where he left off, you know. So I'm gonna pretty much try to start wrapping it up off that point right there, you know. But like I say, you know, they put this stuff right here in front of people's faces. You know, these ancient pagan deities, you know, they're still being worshipped and exalted. You know, the wicked are still sacrificing to these particular false gods here. So, you know, and this is why, you know, the Most High Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai has instructed us to not do as the heathen do, you know, to not partake in their ways, you know, to come up out of Babylon, you know, your hearts, your thoughts, you know, get up out this shit, you know, get your mind off of this, get your heart out of this place, you know, and only focus on the Most High, whose name is Yahweh, and his only begotten Son, whose name is Yahweh Shai. Start wrapping it up. Let's go into Jeremiah 7 real fast here, though. Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 9 and 10. Do you really think you can steal, murder, commit adultery, lie, and burn incense to Baal and all those other new gods of yours, and then come here and stand before me in my temple and chant, "We are safe," only to go right back out and do all those evils again? And this is the Most High speaking to Israel here. And this is why I was just saying we need to come up out of this, get our minds up out of this shit, get our hearts up out of this. You know, if there's anybody out there who's actually, rooting for Trump, I'm talking about, you're of the tribes, and really there probably is, but we're only really concerned with the elect. But, get that shit out your mind. Whatever Trump got going on, we only hope that he's, the person that's going to help usher in the destruction of this place. And that's pretty much it. We hope that the Most High, Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, is actually using Trump to help usher in the destruction of this place. But other than that, there's a lot of jakes out there, particularly those who call themselves conservatives. They're rooting for Trump. They're all on his side. They're hoping for the best. They want that damn ballroom and shit. Hey man, get the ballroom ready for Trump. Not even really realizing what the fuck it is, that they're asking for, that they're praying for here. That they're eager to see again. And I say again because once, like I said, we were all here before. We have all come back now. So, and we are the last generation. So none of this, is new. All of this is just simply a continuation of everything that was already happening. So with that being said, last verse, I'll wrap it up here with Jeremiah chapter 30. I'm going to start back again with Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7, but I'll read through verse 11. In LT, in all history, there has never been such a time of terror. It will be a time of trouble for my people Israel. Yet in the day, they will be saved. For in that day, says Yahweh of heaven's armies, I will break the yoke from their necks and snap their chains. Foreigners will no longer be their masters, for my people will serve Yahweh, their power, and their king, descended from David, the king I will raise up for them. So do not be afraid, Jacob, my servant. Do not be dismayed, Israel, says Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, for I will bring you home again from distant lands, and your children will return from their exile. Israel will return to a life of peace and quiet, and no one will terrorize them. For I am with you and will save you, says Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. I will completely destroy the nations where I have scattered you, but I will not completely destroy you. I will discipline you, but with justice. I cannot let you go unpunished. I pray this has been edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.